Welcome, everybody. Glad to be back for what is now the second episode of Guys Who Watch Football. Posh, welcome. Andy, first time on the show, one of our co-hosts. Sorry you weren't able to make it last week, but you missed a hell of a ride. Hopefully you watched the first installment, but we had an exciting week of the playoffs, and we're now previewing the next round. We got through the wild card. How you guys feeling?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. I did catch the first episode of what I call the Pod 3.0.
I guess so.
But great job. Before we get into the banter, I'm going to bring some hot takes, maybe pointedly or not. But great job on episode 1.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and take the credit for that one. No, it was wonderful. It was awesome. It's great to be talking to a larger audience. It's great to be kind of expanding our scope and focus a little bit beyond our own. Even though we, have been talking about the greatest fantasy football league in the world, it's nice to just be able to have a little less esoteric of a topic so it's more relevant to a broader audience.
Well, that's a great
little
point.
less Posh-centric of a topic, you mean?
Hey, when you let someone become the champ, and he also wins all the DFS, and he also wins Survivor. At some point, that just kind of becomes the dominant. It sort of becomes a cult of personality around me.
I guess
wants to do.
It balances out that jersey and your other teams.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Look, I think let's just get a reminder out there. We've got some first-time listeners. Fantasy football season is over for everyone, and that's obviously creating a void. We've determined it's time to fill that void because we can still talk about football, and there are other meaningful ways that we can all still remain engaged because there's a lot happening. Let's jump in. Let's talk about the wild card round. We had 6 games. My high-level takeaway: not great games. I think that maybe this is starting to get folks chattering about whether or not it was a mistake for the NFL to even expand the playoffs. I think that the lower tier seeds just didn't do that well, didn't look that competitive. If you look at, sadly, the Steelers, the Cardinals, even to a certain degree, they've just fallen off a cliff this year. The Raiders, the Patriots just got crushed. So, the Eagles, as I predicted last week, just didn't even look like they belonged on the field. And so, look, that was my big takeaway. I'll give the floor to the two of you, but I didn't like what I saw. I felt like the last regular season week for the NFL was exponentially funner to watch than the wild card round.
No, I think that's exactly the correct take, right? If anything else, the NFL just kind of proved that they had the perfect number of teams that were in the playoffs last year, right? Because it is unfortunate when you have to see this many uncompetitive games. And honestly, the difference between like the best team in the AFC and the second best, or the best team in the NFC and the second best, like it's not that much of a drop off, but to have an entire bye is a huge advantage. And it'll be interesting to me to see, what that's like watching Green Bay and Tennessee, having been fully rested, especially because both those guys have a couple guys that are banged up. How much of an advantage that is for them going forward.
Yeah, I think we clearly would have been better off if the Chargers and Raiders had tied. I'll just say that it would have been better matchups.
Right.
I mean, I know you're Steelers guy, but that might have been the worst game of the weekend. And it wasn't
Buffalo, New England was like entertaining if you just like watch, like it's like it was like watching a video game, right? Like between someone who's never played the video game before and someone who invented the video game. I mean, it was like, I don't think you've ever seen a better performance. I think I read somewhere that the Bills, like it was the first game, but not playoff game, the first game in which a team did not kick a field goal, did not punt, and did not turn the ball over. Like
it's quite impressive.
My goodness.
I know, for all the Patriots fans out there who, Mac Jones made the playoffs. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah. Really. Well, and I will point out that Posh was pretty bullish on Mac Jones and the Patriots on the pod.
I was bullish on Belichick, and like what I said is don't count out.
I think you owe America an apology.
I do, and I'll go ahead, Andy.
I have a quick segment because you guys did say you ran through your picks last week for the games, and you said, well, nobody's really going to hold us accountable, but guys who watch football, maybe we should hold you accountable. So real quick,
damn it.
Bills 47, Pats 17. Posh called the under, which was 43.5. So the Bills beat that by themselves and called the Pats to cover. Bengals 26, Raiders 19. Posh called the Raiders to cover. Did not happen. Bucks 31, Eagles 15. Posh took the Eagles.
boy.
Posh called the over in Niners versus Cowboys, which was 50.5. The game hit 40, and he picked the Cowboys. You both picked. Greg called the Steelers. I can't blame him. It's like picking your football team. But you both did get the Rams right. So
It's a good thing. It's a good thing I'm so much better than you guys at fantasy football.
Yeah, I was going to show.
The only
show
point
how much football knowledge really goes into all this.
The only point I'll make is that I was really only wrong about my own team, which I have every right to pick. I called the opposite of Posh in nearly every other case. The only other rant. Thank you. The only other point that I'll make is on this whole larger question of whether or not we've expanded the playoffs too far. The Rams, great game. Stafford, interestingly, had a perfect passer rating when targeting OBJ. A lot to talk about, but they had to play on Monday night, and now they have to turn around and play against the Bucks in Tampa. And didn't the Bucks play on Saturday? And so there's a huge time gap in the amount of rest that the Bucks got. Now they get to play at home against a team that literally just played on Monday. Not fair.
Yeah, I don't like Sunday, but yeah,
they played Sunday. It is a 1 day difference, but like 1 day makes a big difference in the playoffs. And
especially a night game.
I don't like the spreading the play. I get why they do it for commercial reasons and all that, but like spreading playoffs across 3 different days on the weekends, it's not great.
One day we'll truly accept that. Really, none of this is fair, and they screw teams over all the time.
Are you trying to say that it's all about the money, Andy? The NFL cares more about making money than integrity and player safety.
Well, look, it's rich for us to say that, but all 3 of us have contributed many thousands of dollars to this industry.
100%.
So
100%.
let's move to this week. I think that's what folks really want to hear about. We've got 4 exciting games, 8 teams. I'll point out one fun fact. If you look at the quarterbacks of all of the 8 teams remaining, 6 of them were first round draft picks. The only 2 off the top of my head are Jimmy G and Tom Brady, right? Every other team was actually a really high first round pick with the exception of Aaron Rodgers, right? Because of the slide there with the Packers. So just a first point to make. We've got 2 on Saturday. Let's start with the first game. We've got the Bengals at the Titans, the rested Titans, who are going to be having a healthy Derrick Henry coming back. The number 1 seed Titans going against the upstart Bengals, the new kings of the AFC North. And a very hot offense. So Andy, why don't you kick us off with what you're watching out for there?
I'm really watching out to see if the Bengals can keep scoring. They really had a chance to put up a ton more points against the Raiders than they did, which I think was pretty disappointing. The blueprint is out on how to beat them. You really need a good pass rush. I'm not sure if that's the Titans' strength. I know they have a good defense, but it is an interesting matchup. I heard you guys talk about how the Titans are a bit underrated. The fact of the matter is they beat.
I said they were overrated.
Yeah, overrated. Excuse me.
I think they're underrated. I think they're a good football team.
Well, you guys split that. But the fact of the matter is they beat both the Bills and the Chiefs, which is why they're the 1 seed. And they also
lost the Jets, but
for sure. But they beat the 2 teams that everyone's saying are the 2 best teams in the conference. They earned the spot. It's supposed to be really cold there. I looked up the weather. It's gonna be like 10 degrees. I think that the Titans play the style of game to win here. So if I were to go in the direction, the 3.5 line is tough, but I'm going to take the Titans there. I just think the home crowd, the week off, I don't think that the Bengals are playing as well as you'd like to see them playing. I know they ended the season hot, but really last week I didn't find them impressive. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the Titans.
The big question for me is the health of Derrick Henry. And honestly, it's a true total mystery. No one has seen this dude play in a couple months, right? And it is entirely possible that he's great. He's good to go. And he's actually been good to go for a couple of weeks, but they've wisely just been holding him back in practice. And then he's going to be on the field, 30, 35 touches, and he's going to dominate the way he dominated their first part of the season, the last few seasons. It's also possible that the whole thing is a decoy. And the reality is like, he's coming off a significant injury. He's got like a steel plate in his foot, and he's not going to be able to do what he's normally able to do in terms of workload, or he's not the same player when he's out there. And if that's the case, it's still a good football team. They still have tremendous weapons in AJ Brown and to some extent Julio Jones, but then I don't think they're the favorites anymore. So it's tough to make a prediction kind of without knowing that one big variable. I like the Titans. I liked them last week. I still think they're going to win the game. I think these odds makers know what they're doing. 3.5 sounds about right, but I will take them to cover and win and of course win the game.
Well, I don't do lines. I don't know whether or not there's a steel plate in Derrick Henry's foot, but I do still
Fact
think
check,
that
true.
they're over. I do think they're overrated. Like I said, I also said last week that the Bengals are good, but they're just not quite there, right? And so this is a game that could change that paradigm, right? If they pull off this win, beat the number 1 seed, albeit overrated, catapult themselves into the championship game, that would be really amazing. So this is the biggest game in the lifetime of most Bengals fans. And so if you're from Cincinnati and you're listening, you've got to be really excited. But I'm trying to pick the Bengals, but I got to go with the Titans here. Let's go to the
I think
NFC.
I'll be like rooting for the Bengals in this game, watching the game.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they're going to pull it off, just to be clear. I love Burrow.
They're both good offenses. If anything, the Bengals might have a better, more high powered offense. But the defense, to me, it's not even a competition, right? Like I just don't see who in Cincinnati is going to shut down AJ Brown, regardless of how Derrick Henry plays.
Yep.
Yeah. I think most people outside
Foreman's been good,
the state
honestly.
of Tennessee want the Bengals to win. The NFC's Saturday matchup is actually featuring the lowest remaining seed in the playoffs, the 49ers at the 6th spot. The next closest is the 4, right, with the Rams. And so that's just an interesting point in and of itself. Not a lot of upsets coming into this week, going up in Green Bay against the number 1 seed Packers. So this one has a bigger spread on it. But let's go to Posh first for this one. What are you watching out for? Big calls for this one.
So if this matchup happened like during the regular season, this might have been like the fantasy all-star game, right? I mean, other than the Chiefs, I think like these teams like both feature just like a tremendous amount of fantasy relevant players. I'm personally really excited to see who I think probably are the 2 best wide receivers in the NFL right now, and Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams going up against each other. Both just like unstoppable guys who can do everything on the field. My money is if I were to bet on this game, it would probably be on the Packers. Even with the 5.5 point spread, it's a rested team. Aaron Rodgers has played since the first week when he collapsed against the Saints. He's been like a man who is possessed. I don't know, like the guy is playing out of his. I think it's like 22 touchdowns and like 4 interceptions. Like and 2 of them win that first game. Like it's just been, the guy is totally like playing at a different level. He doesn't seem to care at all about anything else in the world. I've never seen such a liberated, individual that plays football without caring for his team or anything else. I don't see that train rolling over. As good as the Rams are, as many weapons as they have, I just don't see the Aaron Rodgers story ending with a playoff loss in their first game.
Andy?
So I think this is going to be a great game. You guys mentioned last week how Cowboys Niners reminded you of your youth. Like same here. This is like Steve Young and Brett Favre, right?
That's
like
right.
Same thing. The game's going to be frigid cold. I think the wind chills are going to be in the negative, especially because it's going to be at night. But I think the 49ers are the type of team, their style, that they can hang in this game. They've got a good defense. We'll see if Bosa and Warner are back. But the Niners play the type of game where they just grind it out. So I don't know if they're going to win, but I think the line is a little high at 5.5. So I'm going to take the Niners to cover just because I don't know what the over under is. But I think that they're smart enough to know what they need to do to win the game. I don't know if all of that's going to go in their favor, right? Rodgers phenomenal. You guys said it. But I think that they're smart enough to know what they need to do to keep it close. And they're just a really good team too. So I'm going to take them to cover that 5.5.
Over under is 47.5. And that might be a sneaky under call if the weather is as bad as it's going to be. I'll tell you what, like I love like Eli Mitchell in DFS this week. I see him just getting force fed the ball. They don't seem to care if he's fully healthy or not. they just give him the ball over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, the Packers or weakness is
Run
defense.
defense. Yeah.
Right. There's no
Specifically run defense. Yeah.
and the 49ers strength is running the ball.
Right.
No, you guys just stole my main point, which was
go for it,
I think this all comes down to the run defense of the Packers. And I agree with Andy 100%. I could very well see the 49ers pulling off a win here. They are a very talented team. They clearly know how to control the ball and the clock. And so if the Packers run defense is not up to par, and if Aaron Rodgers is only a little off in the passing game, or if there's a fluky turnover, that sort of thing could change this thing. Obviously, it fares well for the Packers that this is in Green Bay. And so I'm probably slightly favoring them, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the 49ers win this.
It could be a time possession battle type thing where, if you limit him, he only gets 6 or 7 possessions all game. You see how many you can score.
Exactly. Let's move to Sunday. First game, we've got the Rams at the Buccaneers. This is a great matchup.
Yeah, it is.
I think that this could be a really exciting game. Posh, you mentioned the fantasy, dream from a fantasy football perspective. These two offenses are just absolutely loaded. I know the Bucs are a little bit hurt on offense, but still, my gosh, OBJ really coming into form in terms of his connection with Stafford there. Obviously Cooper Kupp just had one of the best seasons in the history of the position of a wide receiver. So look, they've got less rest, but they're also motivated in that they're going against last year's Super Bowl champions. So I think that the Rams have a lot of reason to show up and surprise people. I'm a little bit more bullish on the Rams than I even am about the 49ers going against the Packers. So I could see this being a surprise too. And I wouldn't be shocked at all. In fact, my upset of the week is I'm predicting that the Rams are going to beat the Buccaneers. Father Time is catching up to Tom Brady. He doesn't have the same weapons he had on offense. We'll see if Fournette is even able to go. Playoff Lenny, is that still a thing? So we'll see. I don't know. Those are my thoughts, though. I think this is an upset, and I think the Rams are going to really pick up steam here going into the championship game.
Did I totally screw up the last round? I think I did. I think I started off the analysis thinking that the Rams are playing the Packers, which is why I did the Cooper Kupp Devontae Adams thing that probably didn't make a lot of sense. But in that case,
said the Rams. Yeah.
So this is what I was referring. This is the fantasy football.
We're just guys that watch
all-star.
football.
Yeah. This is the fantasy.
Probably why
all
your picks were wrong last week too. We'll give you another chance, though. Go ahead.
Quick sidebar. I have to say it. My daughter, in her 4 weeks of being alive, has seen her father win more fantasy football playoff games than yours has in 4 years. So
she's also seen you win more in fantasy football than the Jets have in your entire lifetime. So
I don't know who that's really supposed to be a burn against, because you're like the Jets fan who now is, like the Jets, you wore the Jets jersey 1 week and the Steelers the other.
You're literally a lifelong Jets fan. There we go. Black and gold.
There's something to be said for the loyalty of wearing this jersey. It's not much to be said, but there's something there. Anyway, back to the matchups we've been breaking down. This is truly the fantasy football all-star game, I think. Tom Brady in the playoffs. I was burned on the Belichick one last week. I'll say it this time with Brady. There probably is not a better bet than Brady in the playoffs. The record is just insane. I think Mike Evans, being one of the only kind of healthy name brand receivers, is a huge beneficiary of that. I know the Rams have Cooper Kupp. I know the Rams have OBJ. I know the Rams have just an incredibly dynamic, high-powered offense and a star-studded defense. I still don't think they're going to go in the road and beat Tom Brady at home. I
think Darrell Henderson's also coming back off the IR too, so it gives them even more of a
Cam Akers, Cam
Cam
Akers just a couple months removed from a horrific injury, played, looked good, had a big workload. Yeah. They're all getting healthy.
You need the depth when you can get it in the playoffs.
Yep.
Andy,
I still don't. I still think it's going to be Buccaneers, and I think they easily cover the 3-point spread.
Yeah, I think that you guys laid out very well both sides of this as I was thinking about the game. I think that these two teams last week probably played two of the three worst teams in the playoffs. I know people hear the Cardinals and don't think that, but they were really pretty poor down the back quarter of the season and really looked terrible in that game. And the Eagles, I mean, they were down. Score doesn't look that bad, but that game was 31-0 before you blinked. And, they sort of put it in kneel down mode from there. But you're making excellent points. I think my head says the Rams have a better team right now. I think Bucks fully healthy. I think this is a no-brainer. You take the Bucks. The Rams are healthier and probably more talented team, but man, you've just seen it over and over and over again. Tom Brady in the playoffs at home, well rested, as you mentioned. It's just until I see it done. And I know those last few years of the Pats, he had that loss at home Tennessee. But I think we all know the situation. They're a much less talented team. And until I see, this, it's tough to pick against the guy.
Yeah, it's true.
And the spread is under 3. So I'm going to go with the Bucks at home and take that 2.5. I don't, logically, it doesn't make much sense, but man, it's just until you kill the king, he's not dead.
And it wasn't close last week. It's still a home game for Tom Brady in the playoffs.
Yeah. The Eagles are not the Rams, though. Let's be clear on that. The Eagles are one of those teams where
I'm sticking with my pick. I'm sticking with my pick. But the only point I'll make against myself is we've seen it a million times with respect to Tom Brady not having all of these weapons around him, yet he still routinely won Super Bowls in New England with subpar wide receivers.
When you started talking, I was going to pick the Rams. I went into the podcast going to pick the Rams. And then,
and if he had Godwin and Antonio Brown playing, I would say without a doubt the Bucs are going to win this. But I just think that the Rams are going to come out hot. If that offense is on fire, and if they get big plays out of Ramsey and Donald on defense, people forget they've got a stacked defense, and so I think they're going to pull it off. But you never feel comfortable betting against Tom Brady.
I wouldn't be surprised either way. But I think maybe it's just the last 20 years of PTSD as a Dolphins fan, seeing that guy just slash throats. I don't know if Stafford has the killer in him. We've seen Stafford melt in big games.
He's 1 week. He's 1 week. He's 1 week off of his first victory.
He's also a tough dude, and he hasn't really had a lot of tough moments.
I'm not saying
he hasn't had a lot of big games to play in.
I agree. I'm not saying he's not a tough dude. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. You're right that he hasn't had a lot of opportunities. Well, we haven't had a chance to see him do it.
It's true.
On the flip side, he's coming off the momentum of his first playoff win ever, and he could be riding high. So
100%. It's a great game.
I'm hoping.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
Next matchup is another iconic one.
The best one. I don't
want to beat a dead horse, but two just historic franchises. You've got the Bills and the Chiefs meeting in the playoffs. I love it. I think that this is definitely the matchup of the week in the minds of many football fans around the world. So, it's almost a shame that they're not meeting up in the championship game and that they're forced to play here ahead of that. But the Bills at the Chiefs, Arrowhead Stadium, going to be an electric environment. Can the Chiefs get back to the Super Bowl? They obviously need to not only get through the Bills here, but then win the championship game. So we'll see if they can pull that off. I don't know what I think is going to happen, so I'm going to let Andy take this one first.
I don't know either. I'm really excited for this game. I think that the Bills have been slightly better for most of the year than the Chiefs. The Chiefs have the built-in advantage of the home crowd. If this game's in Buffalo, you're taking the Bills. I think, no doubt. Yeah. I think I still am leaning slightly towards the Bills. I think they've now had. I think you have to lose in the playoffs before you win most of the time, and they've now gone back-to-back playoffs. They advanced pretty far last year and lost. Right? I think they won a game or two last year and lost.
Yeah.
And I think this is time for Allen. He knows if he's going to take the crown from Mahomes, he's got to do it here. And man, they did look unstoppable. I obviously hate the Patriots, but the Patriots are a good defense, well coached, and he slashed them up. The Chiefs' weakness is D. I think we're in for a hell of a game. But if your upset was the Rams, I'll take the Bills as my upset of the week here.
I think it's not. I don't think it's going to be close. I think this is going to be a Bills blowout. I think this is going to be truly like the passing of the torch. I think Josh Allen is more than ready for
Mahomes, 24.
They're both young guys, but Mahomes has been at the top of his game a little longer. I think Mahomes has been widely recognized as maybe the best quarterback in the league, certainly the best kind of youngish quarterback in the league for the past few years. And Josh Allen
He could
is gonna
have
be
3
thought of the
Super
guy.
Bowls right now. I think he's actually an underachiever. The guy should definitely have at least one more Super Bowl.
Well, they
It-
should have beat the Pats in that AFC Championship game where the guy jumped off sides.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So at the
Yes.
beginning of next season, we're going to be talking about Josh Allen the way we talk about Patrick Mahomes now. I think I mean the performance they put on against a good defense last week was so outrageous. Like they're peaking at the right time. They're firing on all cylinders.
They
lost
found a
their
running game for the first time in 3 years. Of the
Imagine
last
that.
few weeks.
They lost
Yeah.
their best defensive player, arguably, in Tre'Davious
Yeah.
White, and their defense somehow got better, right? Like
Yeah.
they're completely shutting down like any offense that winds up in their path. I see a blowout here. I probably will take the over because I think it's going to be a high scoring game. But again, the Bills have a fantastic defense. The Chiefs do not. And that's probably going to be the difference. And I think nothing is going to stop Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills from making it to the AFC Championship.
Yeah, look, nothing you guys are saying is off. I think that the Bills are a more complete team, is a more diplomatic way of saying what Posh just tried to say. It's at home. The Chiefs do start slow a lot, and they love to play catch up or blow the team out in the second half. I don't think they're going to have the advantage of being able to do either of those things in this game. So, I think I'm going with the Bills as well, which is hard to do because it's at Arrowhead. But yeah, I think that this could be it for the Bills. They've got a really solid team. If Josh Allen wins a Super Bowl for Buffalo, the guy's going to own the town. So the fan base is ready. You want to be cheering for that too. So I think I'm going to go with the Bills here.
Yeah.
3 for 3 picking the underdog. I love it.
It's like not a shock if the Chiefs win, obviously. They're really good. They haven't felt all year like they're the Chiefs of the last few years. Maybe this happens sometimes. Teams get complacent. Maybe they were just waiting, ready to turn it off for the playoffs. I mean, they killed the Steelers.
It was nice to have a bye. It was nice. They also had a bye in the first round.
Yeah, they got.
There were 2 byes in the
scrimmage.
AFC.
Yeah.
I think Andy's spot on. Do they have fatigue from all of the embarrassment of riches, if you will, of just being that good for the last few years and winning a Super Bowl, or are they hungry enough to come back for revenge from last year's loss?
Yeah.
And we'll find out. Last week was not a true barometer for them, as much as I hate to say it, and so we'll find out this week because the Bills are the opposite, even though the Steelers beat them.
Yep. It's going to be very cold there as well, which I think is fine for both teams, obviously.
Yeah, clearly.
I'm really looking forward to watch like all the weapons in Kansas City up against like just an incredibly talented defense, right? Because like that's always been the problem with the Chiefs, right? Is like how do you defend against so many different like people who can beat you, right? Tyreek Hill could be the fastest player in the league. Kelsey is just like it's the perfect like thunder and lightning, where he's just like this big hulking human being who can catch anything over a safety, right, or over any linebacker. And they have the running game, and I mean like Jerick McKinnon looked good last week, right? Like there's a lot of ways they can beat you. I'm really excited to see how the Buffalo defense figures that out, but I know they will.
The flip side is Allen can be reckless and throw a ton of interceptions. So if he goes in there and throws 3 picks, and if the Chiefs offense is even above their own average, which is pretty good, then, the Chiefs could definitely pull this off. So
it's a good coaching matchup, really, because both the coordinators, and we can sort of
two offensive coordinators who are kind of the top of the list.
Exactly. And even the Bills defensive coordinators getting interviews for jobs. And obviously Andy Reid is, you rank him somewhere in the top 3 of NFL coaches right now. So interesting to see the schemes. I saw a lot of people were like bitching about why did you show that Travis Kelce play where he threw the touchdown at the end, and like, you should have saved that for a game like this or something like that.
That's fair.
Which I wish he did too. But.
I bet he did. The context there is I won the DFS matchup last week within our fantasy football league. Although to be fair, I was up before that play and I still would have won without it. But that was kind of like the cherry on top that won me the final contest.
Posh, why don't you do the world a favor? Tell us what DFS is. There's a lot of guys, people, women that played fantasy football, and there's a void in their lives, like I said in the beginning. But you can still rally, get your folks together, and join DFS and have some fun. So why don't you give us the rundown?
Sure. So daily fantasy sports, it's sort of like fantasy football for people with commitment issues, right? Like you have leagues that do not last more than 1 week, and you can create them with as many people as you want. You can create them with 2 people, with 10 people, and you can kind of customize the rules a little bit. So you're playing one contest and then it's over at the end of that, right? And one of the other cool features is like, everybody can kind of pick the same players if you so choose. You have a set salary cap budget, and every player has a predetermined salary based on how good the fantasy gods think they are, right? So you can build whatever team you like as long as you fill up your, up to the extent of your budget, and then you put that up against other teams around the league. We've been doing it just for the playoffs the past couple of years in PPF, with some good results. At least in my case, I've been winning them all. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Craig. You're kind of an old school traditionalist who probably had not done a lot of DFS before we started this with PPF.
Yeah, look, I did it last year and I won 1 week, so I'm definitely a fan of it. To your point, it's a great way to play, 1 week of fantasy football. You don't have to be overly committed to the squad. You pick the guys that you think are going to do well that week. And then you don't have to look at it again the next week, and you can start from scratch. So if you're looking to bring the band back together, fire up that WhatsApp chat, that group chat with the people that you played with all year, this is a way to keep it going. So why not?
And if you're a DFS fantasy service provider and you want to sponsor a podcast, give us a call. We'll plug your website in the next one of these.
Over 100 views last week.
Ooh, Andy, you've been playing DFS, I'm sure, longer than either of us have. You have anything to add?
I mean, I love DFS. I do a weekly one with another group of guys I know. I did not do well this year, but it's fun. And I actually 2 years ago got my wife into it too. So
Nice.
We do another weekly one with it's like a group of couples of us, and it gets pretty competitive actually, and a lot of shit talking, which is fun. Just
That's a lot of fun.
It's a nice little bonding experience.
If you can,
if football can be used to bring marriages closer together, that's a win.
And if nothing else, if it's an excuse to keep the football game on the TV, when the wife wants to put on Vampire Diaries, and then that's a win for everybody.
Well, it's a very funny story, because the first time I did it, I shouldn't be saying this, but I told her that she wouldn't understand it.
Oh boy.
And then for the last 2 years, let's say there's like 32 weeks of doing it in this group, she's probably won 20 of the 32 weeks. It's insane. Not just versus me, like of the group. So we always joke that every time she wins, it's going to Ellie's college fund.
Nice. Love that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, look, this is going to be a great week of football. There's not much else to talk about. Excited for the matchups. We mentioned last week the coaching carousel. A quarter of the league doesn't have a head coach right now. No hirings right now. Obviously, people are waiting until teams lose because they have the coordinators that they want to poach and bring on board. I'm a little surprised nothing has happened, though. I would have expected maybe 1 or 2 hirings by now, but I guess folks at least want to get through this weekend. I could see my prediction. You'll see a hiring next week going into the championship.
I'm surprised the NFL even allows like this stuff to take place right now. Cause like I know in baseball, like you can't do this stuff until after the World Series. And I think it makes more sense. I read today that like Eric Bieniemy, who's the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, is literally interviewing with the Denver Broncos today. I'm like, that's crazy to me. The dude has a playoff matchup. He has to go up against the Buffalo Bills in 2 days. And he's now like expending his time preparing and like doing an interview for a job for himself. Like that, it doesn't make sense. Like why the NFL would allow that, and like how that really benefits anybody. There's not really I don't think that there's a practical difference of whether they are allowed to start this process in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks or now. So I don't get why that this is the situation.
You'd have to double down on the rule though. You can't hire a coach until after that.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Coach,
I'm saying you should not be allowed to interview people or make hiring decisions until after the Super Bowl.
Well, I would disagree with that because it's not that long before the draft. It's not just hiring a head coach. You're hiring departments of people. You're hiring offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, scouts. You got to bring in people that know how to run your system. And the draft from the end of the Super Bowl is 90 days after that. That's a lot of work to do. If you're not even going to start interviewing, then you need to interview 10 head coaches. Then that's going to take 2 to 3 weeks. Then you're counting down. You're down to 2 months between hiring the coach and doing that draft and getting all that in order. I would imagine, honestly, that before these games start this week, that there are deals in place to hire some of these coaches that
Probably.
are on teams.
Yeah.
That until, like I know with Flores a few years ago, the deal was in place and they happened to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's a catch-22, right? You want to
that
hire
crazy,
coaches
though?
that are coaching good teams.
If you're a
Yeah,
crafty
but-
owner or GM, though, how funny would it be if you got like a dozen teams together, all of which don't have a coach, and get them to just bog down an entire team's coaching staff by offering interviews for either the head coach or for the coordinator positions, and you just got them all a dozen plus.
Well, the Bills
interviews?
coaches, I mean, this is what the Bills coaches have been doing all week.
It's
I mean, I think
crazy
both
to me.
of them have been
And-
interviewing all week.
And NFL coach interviews, it's not like you're getting it's not like you're getting a job where you just show up in a nice suit and you make a good impression and you talk about like your philosophy. Like these guys like sell themselves like on the most insane preparation possible. Like they want to like kind of like, display for the team ownership and the decision makers, just like the attitude they take into preparing a football team. So these guys, like they're
Yeah.
not just showing up with like a binder and some, like a scratch notepad. Like they really truly put thought into the player personnel and salary cap situation and like all like here's my plan to turn your franchise around. And like every minute and every hour they spend preparing that is like an hour that they can't spend preparing their current team for the playoffs. It's amazing to me that like this is allowed to go on the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not really a solution though. I mean,
the
props
solution
to them.
honestly is to wait till the end of the season. And if you need to move the draft and all that back, you move that back too. Like, I don't think that's like
Look, these
necessarily
are
fixing
these
the
are
calendar.
these are all very wealthy people we're talking about. They know how to manage their time. And
know what,
I
though?
say bring on the chaos.
We're just a bunch of guys who watch football here. What do we know compared to the experts, right? But from where
Yeah.
I'm from where
especially
I'm
about
sitting-
these coaches, we know nothing about the
from
coaches.
where I'm sitting, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yes. Well, kudos to the two of you. It's great to be on again. I couldn't help but think of the old Roosevelt quote that the credit belongs to the man that is in the arena. And that's what we are right now. We're in the arena. We're exposing our views for the betterment of football fans around the world. I think that's something we should be proud of. So episode 2 is in the books, and let's watch some football.
Talk to you later, boys.
Love it.
Until next time, go Steelers.
Go Jets.